All right, thank you everybody. I apologize about the technical delays. We finally have it going. I think we should be good to go. Everyone can hear everyone okay? Quality is all right?
Yeah, I got
awesome.
you guys.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Well, welcome everyone, and welcome to the first ever Good Guys discussion. And so this is going to be a focus on positive male traits and positive male role models and how we can be those people in the space of gaming. I want to thank all of my guests, Flowers, Edward, Hidon, and Riste. Thank you guys for making time out of your busy schedules to come in and do this. And also thank you all for dropping in, all the viewers. It was really telling to me that when I made that tweet, I honestly didn't expect it to get as much traction as it did. And it was really awesome to see how many people in the community were so supportive of doing something like this. I think it really speaks to the necessity for things like this to occur, and hopefully this sets a precedent in the future for conversations to continue occurring. All right. So first off, I kind of want to let everyone introduce themselves. We'll kind of just go from the top and go around clockwise. So Flowers, give us a little bit of background and tell us about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
All right, what's up, everybody? My name is CaptainFlowers. My real name is Clayton Rains. I grew up in small town Ohio for 20-something odd years before I ended up joining the LCS in 2017. I'm currently a professional play-by-play commentator for Pro League of Legends. I've been doing that now. I'm in my 6th year of it. I casted the World Finals, the biggest game that there is, back in 2018. I also do a bunch of streaming and stuff on my own time. Back in Season 6, I was the best starter in North America for all of 3 months. I'm still hanging on to that 6 years later. But yeah, I'm just here. It seemed like a really cool opportunity to sort of talk about some stuff that doesn't really get talked about a lot, but that I do think is very important. So excited to see what we get into here today.
Let's go to Edward.
You said me?
Yeah.
I can't see what you're seeing, so hi everybody. I'm Edward. I go by MindBodyEsports on Twitter. I am a mind-body medicine practitioner, and I have been for about 15 years, working in pro gaming exclusively for the last 6 years, in a lot of different titles with a lot of well-known orgs, helping players and teams optimize their health, their mental health, nutrition, physical health, lifestyle health, and work on a lot of masculinity and toxic detoxing with my clients. And excited to be here and join this awesome group to talk about the topic.
And next would be on my screen, it'd be Hidon.
All right. Hello, my name is Hidon, or Jonas, I guess. I'm from Denmark, 21. Work as professional individual / strategical coach, also in League of Legends. Yeah.
Okay. And then Riste.
Hi, hello, how are you? My name is Riste. I have a huge plethora of people who somehow think I'm Jimmy Fallon, but my name is actually Riste. How's it going, guys? I'm a League of Legends streamer. I've been streaming for about 5 years now, primarily a Garen OTP of North America. My favorite skin is Demacia Vice Garen, so
yes.
Vaporwave aesthetic. I have been raised ever since a child in toxic masculinity. So like this is one of the big things I think that drew me to this conversation and being here today, because I have so many personal experiences based on like a lot of terrible things that I had to deal with growing up, and overcoming that journey of maturing in the right way to be able to embrace a more positive side of masculinity is definitely something that I want to be able to talk more about. And I feel like that this discussion here was a great opportunity for me to take part of. So thank you for having me, Jordan.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you guys again. So a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Jordan Tsai. I'm a physical therapist. I work in pro esports with a few of the orgs here. And yeah, in the same way, I had really strong feelings about toxic masculinity. A lot of the stuff I saw online was really bothering me, and I have a pretty extensive history in dealing with that as well. I'm a military veteran. I spent time in a fraternity in college, so I've been around a lot of potentially toxic male environments. And when I started seeing a lot of stuff, on Twitter and on social media about some of the stuff that people were retweeting and posting and all the conversations that were going on, it felt a lot like, I would like to help do my part in some way to guide conversations in a more positive direction, and maybe take some of the confusion out of, what is good, what is bad, what is toxic, what is, not masculine. And I think there's a lot of misconception there. So in finding some of these individuals, what I hope to find was positive role models that exemplify, in my opinion, what males can look up to in a way that doesn't demasculinate people, but shows them a more, I guess, healthy way to approach their own masculinity. So you can kind of go in whatever order we want, but I'd like to kind of start by opening with, what are your individual definitions of masculinity?
Are we doing the same order, or are we switching up the
No,
order?
no, go.
Let's jump
let's
into the driver's seat.
Let's make this whoever has something to say, just say it, and then we'll try to just go in whatever order makes sense.
All right. I mean, I can start, I guess. I mean, for me, masculinity. I guess like the common masculinity type, I guess, is like a strong, doesn't show emotions, stuff like that, I guess. But for me, it's more about being calm and self-aware, as well as being emotionally sound. I wouldn't say I have like this common conception of you need to be a strong man. Like for me, it's more about like the health when it comes to being strong, but it's mainly just being very confident in your own ability as well as yourself, both emotionally and physically. But it's hard to explain it in a way where it can't like come off, how do you say it, like, I am not English native speaker, so it can sound a bit weird, but just
you're doing great. I mean, you already said something that we should hone in on. Is you said being self-aware, and I've never heard someone say my definition of masculinity is being self-aware. Right, that's usually not the place that we're starting. I mean, loosely, masculinity is just the trait characteristics of a man. So really, we're asking ourselves, like, what's a man? And what does being a man today mean? And what does it mean in esports? But you're right to say it's sticky, right? It's tough to talk about. It's tough to actually even have the conversation without sounding like you're not empathetic of others or not open to other dialogue.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think like one of the things I struggle with in like my own definition of masculinity is combating that ever-growing like necessitation for being decisive. Like I have to know what I need, I want in my life. I have to make a choice. I have to be somebody who takes lead, takes charge, because like that like is like that predisposed like definition of like manliness, like taking things by the reins. And for me personally, I think like as somebody who even growing up as a child like struggled so much in being able to ask for help because I viewed it as a vile insecurity. Being able to admit I don't know what I'm doing, like even day-to-day life when I'm trying to cook a meal with my girlfriend and I'm trying to recite the recipe in my head, I'm completely lost. Like there's nothing that registers. That like being able to admit that is really, really tough for me sometimes, and I've had to fight that my entire life. Sometimes it's okay to like not know what to do or like not know how to feel or how to express yourself, and I feel like what often bleeds into that definition of masculinity is like always in the know, being able to make that choice right there in the moment, not taking time for yourself to feel, to think, to express, things like that, I would say.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, for sure. Like, there's a lot of fathers, I guess, from like older generations that try to hide their emotions instead of coming clean. And you also see this in the league community. There's a lot of toxicity. I think, in my opinion, is definitely up there for the most toxic community. And most people that I see act like this are either afraid of talking about their actual emotions, either extremely competitive or depressed, one of the three. And it's always like what I encounter either when I coach, when I see it. And of course, instead of trying to accelerate the situation and make it even worse, I try my best, obviously not every time, but my best to like say, are you actually okay? And then it turns out that the person most of the time has some deep like underlying issues. Yeah, so I definitely agree with that.
I think for me, a big part of the entire definition and the entire conversation is the fact that if you look at the traditional definitions of masculinity and things pertaining to it, a lot of it is about, you know, being your own man, standing up for what you believe in, like making your choices, and even if it's not popular, even if it's tough to do, like being able to have that sort of steadfastness. But another thing added to that that I don't think gets talked about enough is the ability to, while you're also this steadfast, like headstrong type of person, be able to show mercy and understanding and articulate and educate people when you do have a confrontation. Confrontations are a part of life, but they don't always have to be this zero-sum, I'm right, you're wrong, you must be destroyed so that I can achieve what must be achieved. There's always learning to be had. There's always building that can be done on top of everything that has to result in confrontation, and in the result of everything that has to be destroyed, you can always build things back. And so when I look at people who are actual leaders and who are actual builders and who do actually pave the way, you don't pave the way with a sword, you pave the way with a hammer. If the sword's part of it, then yes, that's the way it sometimes has to be. That's confrontation. But people who are truly masculine and are true leaders and are truly like men who want to create something and make things better than they found them are there to build. They're there to make something better. And for me, that's a huge part of it.
That's an incredible analogy used with the sword versus the hammer, because like how I viewed that sword in my life in terms of masculinity was like aggression, like saying, hey, I'm taking charge of this conversation. I'm right. Here's how I'm going to prove it. And I have been systematically like I'm like learning a different language, like I was incapable of viewing a difficult conversation piece by piece, all wrapped up together as a conversation that doesn't have to have aggression and like toxic emotions to be able to resolve things. I just like, and because of like the life I grew in, like household I was in, like not getting too personal, but I viewed it as a yelling match, just like insults, degrading, things like that. I saw as the only way to really prove a point, and that cut me off from learning a actual healthy way of being able to have difficult conversations, to the point where I still struggle with it as an adult, and I'm learning piece by piece. And I can imagine there's so many people out there that maybe feel the same way I do, because like they only see one language, you know, they only see that sword in front of them when the hammer might have been, you know, to their side the entire time.
Yeah. I think Hidon had a great point about self-awareness and reflecting on yourself, because a lot of times what I notice is that, especially online, these conversations are so one-sided because one or both of the individuals can't see the other person's side at all. And if they're not self-aware of their own biases and what they're already thinking that's contributing to their thought process, then there's no way they're going to see someone else's. And so a lot of times it's almost like they're arguing out of ignorance of both why they feel a certain way and ignorance of what the other person's even trying to say, and it just goes nowhere. And so you get both sides just kind of screaming at each other, and inevitably what comes out is this fundamental dichotomy between, well, you're not masculine enough and this is why, and then the other person says, I am a man, I'm a masculine, and I disagree with you. You know, like the majority of this stuff comes out when it in regards to women and how men should treat women and how men should be different or similar to women. And so I think that a lot of men are really afraid of looking at themselves first and looking at, you know, what is my own definition of masculine? What is my own definition of what it means to be a man? And if you ask people on a very, you know, just broad level, what does being a man mean? You get all sorts of different answers, and that's kind of where the misconceptions and the miscommunication comes in. So that's why I like to open with that. You know, you all have similar but different definitions of what it is to be a man. In that sense, what are some of the, I guess, miscommunications that you feel go on more frequently, especially on social media? What are some of the traits of being manly that get skewed and kind of get warped?
I love that you're using the word feel, and Riste was using the word feel a lot in this as well. We're decentivized to feel. right? We're not supposed to feel, and those emotions when they're expressed, to kind of piggyback on what we've all said, you have somebody that's unhappy with themselves or is still growing in themselves or finding out about themselves or ignoring themselves. And then we're expecting them to somehow process emotions in this context of these games and everything that we're playing together. And I think it's impossible. It's an impossible ask. So when you're talking about the disconnect from their body, right? The disconnect from, their kind of drivers of what they're supposed to be doing, how they're viewed by others. But I love this idea of feel, because in order to feel, you have to create space. You have to take on perspective. You have to slow down and listen. And we're oftentimes, especially the masculine toxicity traits, are trying to answer something, trying to move quickly, trying not to feel, trying to solve something. And I love everything we're talking about. It's so spot on, guys. Riste, what you said about not having the answers and creating space for yourself. That's something that I think in gaming, we talk about that in performance, but in terms of being a man, it's not like, take some time to figure out more about yourself. Take some time to, explore these artistic areas of yourself and explore your body and know what it's like to be in your body and feel your body. That's certainly maybe more in the East, but certainly in the Western Hemisphere, that's very frowned upon.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up too. There's cultural differences, right? I think most of us, Hidon's probably the exception to this, but in the U.S., the version of masculinity that we have is sort of this stereotyped exaggeration of a man, right? Like it's a bearded, burly guy with a machine gun is like
80s action hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if that's the standard that we're using for what is a man, almost all of us are so far not there. Like that's a. It kind of seems a little bit impossible, right, to even be a man then. So what should be the actual goal for most young men when this is the example that they're given?
They must be as swift as a coursing river.
Of course. Yeah.
I think we're saying what the course of action is, right? Don't have the answers. Create some space. Learn how to take perspective on. Mm-hmm. Question your upbringing. Mm-hmm. A lot of the male toxicity that we're seeing was environmental from the time they were young and the examples they had around them. Mm-hmm. So being willing to, I speak with a lot of people, not just gamers, but a lot of people about that relationship with their parents and try to unpack what that really was and how they were programmed in that environment. So when Riste was saying that, I kind of thought to myself, man, the environment I grew up in, we kind of joked that like dad was like Donald Trump. That was before he was president. And to have that type of example around you all the time, you have to take a large step back and be willing to maybe soul search, if you will, or work on that self-awareness piece.
Yeah.
I was bullied.
What do you guys tell other gamers? What do you tell other gamers? You guys have, this group of guys has high level of intrinsic awareness, spent time kind of self-exploring. What's that piece of advice that you guys share? I don't want to just be a practitioner on the call here and say what I tell players, but what do you tell players as people that have been through it?
I guess I can lead here. So often when I encounter like high elo players and pro players for that matter, they often feel, I don't know if you can like call this like a masculinity thing, but they often feel like because they are at a certain point in their career, they are, I guess you can say most of them, I don't want to generalize here, are like narrow-minded instead of being open-minded. So when they get told something, instead of thinking about it, their ego takes over, and I guess I don't know if like you can say this as a masculinity thing, but their ego takes over, and then instead of processing it and instead of thinking, maybe I'm wrong, let me actually think about this for a second. Okay, I might actually be wrong. But instead of doing that, it often comes out as like, I am right. I tunnel vision on this decision. Tunnel vision is on this way of viewing it. But it depends from person to person, but it's often the higher you go on the ladder, the higher you go on pro player, and I coach like from the lowest to the absolute highest. And you can clearly see it. The higher you go, like the more narrow-minded most players are. Some are really open-minded, and some are extremely flexible mindset-wise. And I actually had this with a guy in the chat right now, called Why Not. He was embarrassed approaching me. He was in Korea, boot camping, etc., and he found himself stuck at like the master elo. The most of you probably know it. And he was embarrassed reaching out to me. So I reached out to him. We had a good, productive talk, and then he overcame his hurdle. But he started off being embarrassed. Why do you have to feel embarrassed? Two minds are always better than one, for the most part at least.
I think that's really interesting, especially talking about how you say that they become, like the attitude becomes more narrow-minded, it becomes more entrenched upon itself, like the more skilled and the more capable they already perceive themselves to be. Because, like, you know, obviously if you're a guy who's in iron, pretty much anybody around you that you run into who knows anything about the game can tell you, yeah, you probably don't know a whole lot about the game because you're not high ranked. If you're a challenger guy, it is very easy for you to dismiss the vast majority of opinions, the vast majority of outside takes or perceptions because, well, you're not challenger, I'm challenger. How on earth would you know better than me? Like, of course, I know what I'm doing. I've gotten here on my own merits. Like, shut up. Why would I listen to you?
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the things that applies to a lot of things, is especially in this day and age, and I don't want to get too far off track here, but in a world where more and more it's easier for people to have the things they already think reinforced through things that they read online or through the conversations that they have with other people who may or may not be completely anonymous and or even arguing in good faith to begin with online, it's very easy for people to say, no, well, this has to be how it is. This is how I've done everything so far. Like, this is the way. There's no way other than this. I don't know what you're talking about. You might come from some bullshit, but over here where we do things right, we think about it this way. And I think that that is one of the absolute most self-destructive traits that a person can have. It makes it so you cannot become better. Once you hit that point where you are saying, I cannot comprehend that my view is incorrect and this other view may have merits, you are giving yourself a hard cap. You are saying, this is as far as I will be able to achieve, this is as far as I will be able to evolve, because I am refusing to allow myself to become any better. I am refusing to allow myself the addition of any new information, any new viewpoints that might be able to allow me to break through the barriers that I already have. Because how did we ever break through the barriers that we found when we were iron and we were silver and we were gold or whatever? We discovered more things about the game. We discovered, oh, I should recall when I have 100 HP. Okay, cool, great. I went from iron, I got to bronze now. Oh, I should help my team instead of just taking this grump. Great, I got from bronze and I got to silver. And even though we may have been able to figure those things out for ourselves, eventually you get the point where things become more nuanced, things become more shrouded, and things become more difficult to understand. And that's where I think, yeah, this is like what you're talking about with talking to this guy in Masters and how he feels an embarrassment to talk to you. I don't know this guy, but what I would guess is that that type of embarrassment would come from the idea of, well, I should be able to figure this out for myself. This should be something that I should be able to solve. And so it becomes hard to sort of admit that you don't have all the answers as a default. But I think that once you hit that point, that's the most important point to be able to have those conversations, because otherwise you do get stuck.
Yeah, it's the antithesis of the growth mindset, right? You're saying the cap is exactly right. The real root of this, from what I'm hearing, the theme that I pull is comparing yourself to someone else. When you start comparing yourself to someone else, it makes it tough. And I have people all the time that say, you know, Edward, I should have reached out to you months ago or years ago, you know, but I didn't feel like I could, or I wasn't ready, you know, especially if it's really emotional or something they feel is embarrassing, right? But yeah, it's Flowers, what you're talking about is they're comparing themselves to someone else, and that's, you know, it doesn't matter if we're talking Taoism or psychology or what it is, but when you start comparing yourself to other people, you're going to find a lot of suffering and disappointment and challenges ahead of you. But that cap is 100% right. I do think, I just want to throw out there, because I work with a lot of the pros and I don't work with a lot of the amateurs. A lot of the pros are really open to change too. So some of them come in with a real open growth mindset, but I think the good point here, Hidon, is that they getting to the top that they got to, they might not have been using healthy habits to get there. So, you know, people get to a point and they go, well, what I've done just got me here, and now it's not helping me get further, or it's not satisfying what I need now, and then that hard cap. If they're not growth mindset, there's no way to get them out.
Definitely. Like, of course, as I said, like most people, not everyone is like that. Definitely, but for what you said as well, Flowers. Like, the thing is, the higher you go, the less you realize that you actually know, right? If you are a challenger player, just like a challenger solo queue player, and then you try to enter competitive, you realize that you actually know basically nothing about the game. You might know the very basics of the game, but that's when it starts becoming like actually hard learning, because then like all the small things, all the small details about the game actually matters a lot more than all the big things like wave states, etc. And I read this, I don't know if you know this, Edward, I think you would probably be the best for this, but your brain automatically will always look at the things that you agree with, rather than the actual negative things or the things that your brain will not automatically agree with. And it's just extremely important as a man, in my opinion, to always have this open mindset where you're able to listen to anyone, and then after that you can figure out if it's actual real information. So for example, on Twitter, if someone says something about an item or something, a play, I will always read it and then think, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. Most of the time I will always read it, and then I can make a decision from that, because no matter who you are, you should always have an opinion and you should always be listened to.
Yeah, it's in the Twitter thread originally, the tweet that I made, someone said, "Oh, I already know what this is gonna be like, so I know I'm not watching." And I actually responded to that. I often spend time responding to trolls against the advice of others, but and I just said, why? Like, what are you afraid of? Like, what could you possibly think is going to happen here that you decided before this even occurs that this is not worth listening to? And he said,
do they not know you have a military background and that you lift weights?
Right.
And,
Yeah, well, he's basically like, well, this is going to be one of those like groupthink feminist things where we try to demasculinate all guys and tell them not to be manly and make everyone more womanly. And I was like, you're arguing with yourself. That's not at all what I want to do. Like, that's not at all what I believe in. And he's like, well, it's ironic that you said I'm in a. I told him basically you're stuck in this echo chamber of repetitive, like malformed opinions that all men want other men to be women, and that's not true. We want you to respect women. We would like you to respect yourselves, but there's a huge difference there, right? And in the end, it basically came down to he had decided before any of this even came out that what I was trying to do was parody arguments that they're already making, right? So both sides, I see this on both sides. It's a problem is that not every, I guess, feminist, right? I consider myself a feminist. I respect women. I believe that women are worthy of respect as individuals. But that doesn't mean that I think all men should act like women, or that all roles are completely out the window, right? A mother and a father are very different roles when it comes to like biology, at the bare minimum. But I do think that in today's day and age, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of individuality for every situation. And for someone to just immediately jump to the conclusion that, oh, this isn't worth talking about, is exactly like you said, Flowers. You have set a cap on what you're going to possibly be introduced to, and therefore you're not going to ever think outside of what you already know. How is that even as a concept good for any individual's development into the future? That's impossible. And in my experience, I've seen a ton of that between the military, fraternity, and then higher education, right? And the higher education is a huge problem of the older physicians get, the older medical professionals get, the less likely they are to adjust what they think and what they know. And that's why it's a phenomenon they've actually done research on. Older surgeons tend to actually be less effective than surgeons who are 4 to 5 years out of school. There's a natural decline in skill level that's compensated for by experience, but only if the experience is tempered with constant self-progression. And the only way to self-progress is by identifying weaknesses. And so instead of getting better and better, physicians have gotten worse and worse as they age in their careers because they no longer think that they make as many mistakes as they used to, when in reality, they've stopped learning. They've started doing the same thing over and over. It's a really, really hard problem to deal with in the medical community, but it's reflective of, surgeons and physicians are people who are genuinely and intrinsically motivated to be the best that they can, right? They didn't get to where they are without doing a ton of stuff. And I'm not saying that they want to be bad, but the system doesn't allow them to be as good as they could be despite efforts. They are required to do continuous education. They're required to continually updating their certificates, all that stuff. Why are they getting worse? It's because they're not identifying actual problems, and they're not challenging themselves like they did when they were first year out of school to think, I'm not good enough. They think they are good enough, and that immediately shifts the entire direction of how you self-educate. So to tie it back into the masculinity though, if we already think that we are as manly as we need to be and we know everything, and I know what a man is, I know what a woman is, and I should just fit in my role, then it makes it very difficult for you to see any other sides. It makes it very difficult for you to continue to grow and evolve as a person. So kind of on that note, what are some things that you guys have seen? Well, maybe we'll just kind of go in order now, because I think it's a little bit easier to kind of get people to jump in. But let's start with Riste. What are some ways that men can self-differentiate a little bit better between positive and toxic traits that they see online?
Okay. Good question. So I think in my journey of maturing as a person and just kind of holding up that mirror to my self and other people and how I'll see myself as I view other people, I realize that more and more that even in the slightest, most subtle ways, like the people you surround yourself with, like even presently, or the people you have surrounded yourself with in the past and present and future, will always be able to influence you in some way, shape, or form. This could trickle down to like the slightest habit, like something that you could pick up from somebody. Like when I think really hard, sometimes I put my forefinger, I put my pointing finger on my nose and I just hold it there for a few seconds. I never came up with that myself. That was something that I got from a friend like years back in college, and I still do it to this day. And like subconsciously, you just pick it up. And I realized that over the years, I've kept a lot of people in my life that just didn't really deserve to be in my life anymore. And the fallout from that is that I had been influenced in a lot of different and toxic ways that actually brought down the personality of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to express myself. And it's overall lowered my own level of self-love. And the thing about social media is that you can follow a certain group of people online and be like, hey, I'm really engaged by this content, but at the same time you're also being influenced by that content as well. Like take the clip of solo queue, latest clip of solo queue, whether it be found on Reddit or Twitter, where somebody says, enough's enough, I'm gonna go ahead and run it down this game. You're being shown an example as to how to feel and how to react to a situation, right? We see a lot of that on social media because like this is not only the thing that gets buzz, it's a norm, it's a generated response, and then we go ahead and diminish that time that we put towards thinking about the alternative, right? Okay, what could be better here? Maybe taking a break, maybe instead of bottling up, maybe telling somebody, venting that frustration to another person as to how crappy my solo queue game just went. And it's very easy just to take that path of negativity because like that saying of how misery loves company, it's very, very easy to go ahead and jump on that train. To be able to say, hey, you know what? I screwed up here. Hey, you know what? Today sucks. I acknowledge that today sucks. Let me go ahead and just soak in it. Maybe just reach out to a friend. Like, reaching out for help, as I said before, has been one of the most difficult things for me. And I think, like, as like studies have shown based on what I've read in my research, like women have an easier time opening up about how they feel and their like emotions and stuff like that, and they're able to go ahead and tether and get the support that they need. So for men, for example, it's tough. Like, and I think like that expression of reaching out for help is viewed as a weakness, right? Like that sign of emotional maturity can sometimes being able to express that you don't know where you stand. You feel emotionally terrible. You feel like the world is against you. And like, I think the way to differentiate, like the whole toxic versus positive, masculinity on social media is like, instead of encouraging somebody or like, instead of like egging on somebody who's having a really miserable day, just send them a DM. Say, hey man, are you all right? Do you want to talk? Because like, I see a lot of people on social media take the alternative route where they go ahead and make a joke and make like humor out of like a really bad situation, when deep down inside they could really be having something that's really going on that could be affecting their own mental health. And sometimes like reading the signs is always tough, of course, but like I think it's important to recognize the signs, and this also ties back into your own awareness, right? But I think like you have to be able to read between the lines and like growing your perception as like whether a player, a person, you know, being able to navigate conversations. I think it's all about reading in between the lines a little bit, you know, trying to ask yourself, what is on the other side of this, right? Is this just one dimension, or is there something more to this? You know, so things like that in particular. I think I'm just going to end on that. I'm just going to go on.
All right, let's jump over. Flowers, what do you think? What are some positive, negative traits of masculinity that you think, or ways to differentiate those things?
So ways to differentiate it, I guess. One of the big things I look at it is how would, like, if I'm looking at the way somebody does something, like I'll go ahead and just continue along with the same example that Riste is using here with watching a clip and a guy's like, you know what, screw this, I'm running it down, fuck these people, fuck this game, I'm sick of this, 5 games lost in a row now, send it down mid, I'll show them. What if the vast majority of people behave this way? What if everybody behaved this way? That's one of the immediate tests that I do on something to see what I actually think of it. Because in that one instanced moment, yes, if it's somebody funny doing it as a one-off when they've had a bad streak of games and it's clear that it's content and it's like, oh, okay, haha, they're doing this for laughs. Look, isn't it hilarious? It's easy for people to say, oh, yeah, that's just him, man. That's the way he does it sometimes. He's had a bad bunch of games. Can't you see that? But the way that I always try to look at these things is similar to what Riste was saying. This gives an example. This sets a tone. It gives you a flag to follow. And if all of a sudden everybody started waving that flag, how would it feel? Well, if every single game I have people running it down because they think that their experience matters more than everybody else and their experience has been bad and it's time for everybody else to suffer and know what they've been going through, damn it. Well, that leads to a shit world where all it is who can make everybody else around them suffer more. So that's one thing that I think works for me when I look at these situations, when I look at how should I behave in this. I'll use an example from my own life. And that is one of the things that I've had the most trouble dealing with after becoming a public personality. Even as a D-list niche internet micro celebrity, as a League of Legends caster, like one of the things that you have to deal with is bad faith actors just trying to rile you up or talk their shit on the internet. The amount of times that I have had people like come after me and just be like, oh, you stupid idiot, yada, 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 you fucking suck, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And they'll come at you with the most half-baked arguments that don't even make any sense. It's like, you know that no sensible person would say this and stand behind the words being spoken. And so many times I am compelled to jump in there and just try to rip these people apart and say, you have no business talking, why are you even opening your mouth? Spend 2 extra seconds, think about what you're saying. But then I stop and I think, I'm like, this is doing no good. This person is not talking to me because they want to have a legitimate discussion. This person is angry either at me or at the game or at themselves or whatever, and this is them lashing out with no profile picture, a name and a bunch of numbers. There's no consequence. There's never going to be a consequence, and there's never going to be anything constructive that comes out of this. All I am doing by responding to this person, as aggravating as they are to me and as under my skin as they get, is giving them a positive feedback response that this shitty behavior works. This got a response from somebody. This pissed off CaptainFlowers. They wanted to take out whatever was going wrong with them on me, and it worked. And so one of the things that I always try to think is, what is the consequence of this? What is it actually doing to respond, to do this thing that, you know, smacking somebody back who tried to smack you, a lot of traditional definitions of manliness would say, yeah, that's being a man. Smack that idiot upside the head and put him in his place. That's what they'd say. But it doesn't do anything. It doesn't make anything better. And so whenever I consider things, if I want to look at something that could be perceived as a masculine choice, and I want to see, would this be something that is toxic or would this be something that is positive? I don't think of the action itself. I think of the consequence. And with the example of these random people on the internet, the consequence is it doesn't make me feel any better. I don't feel any better by putting this guy in his place or whatever. It proves him right and continues his shitty behavioral pattern. And it doesn't make anything better. That's what I try to get to, is leave things better than you found them. And if something isn't making things better than before you took an action, then why did you take that action?
Going along with the hammer thing, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Gotta stay on theme.
Way to stay on topic. Yeah, staying on theme. That's man, you guys have thrown out some really strong things here. I mean, first off, both of you were talking about people who are trolling you that you think have the ability to take perspective, right? And a lot of the times, these people are not interested in taking on a perspective. They're not interested in thinking of your perspective, of a utilitarian perspective. What's better for the community? Is this a good thing? Am I sharing truthful news? So a lot of times when I'm dealing with a content creator or someone who's running a gambling stream or something, and they're getting death threats, or they're getting these, you cost me this much money, or this, that, I think we have to cut off a lot of it. We have to make sure, to Riste's point, anything that you take into your mind becomes you. Anyone you surround yourself with becomes you. Anything you eat, anything you breathe, what we do in this environment becomes us. We're a part of the environment. So when we're looking at this and you say, well, I've had a player who lived on Reddit. He just wanted to read everything on Reddit, and he just got trolled all day long on Reddit. And we knew it wasn't good for his mental, right? And there was no way for him to engage in some of these non-profile picture number aliases that just want to shit on him. These people aren't actually getting happier. Flowers, you said we're like giving them the positivity feedback loop. We are. At the end of the day, that doesn't actually give them anything. They feel more miserable. They don't go to bed and actually feel better about themselves. They feel better about the comparison and getting a rise out of you. So not to throw it back into comparison topics, but these are people that are comparing themselves to the pro. They're comparing themselves to the D-list or whatever you are, celebrity. They're comparing themselves to that person. And in that own misery, as Riste said earlier, the misery needs the company. It's the only space where they don't feel loneliness. If someone else is down here in the muck with them, it's better than being in it alone. And if you're able to bring someone down to it that you perceive as having their shit together, like my guys joke with me, they're like, Edward, you're untiltable. I can't even get you tilted. Like, that's what I'm doing. But we want to put ourselves in an environment where we do lose those relationships that aren't empowering us. You shouldn't be friends with people that don't want to celebrate your triumphs, that don't want to bring you positive energy, that, if you do something great, they shouldn't look at you and have a depression about it. And they should want to uplift you. And if it's family and you got to cut them off, I'm sorry to say, there's times to create that boundary. But as Riste was really hammering on, that comes with self-awareness. You don't create these boundaries. You don't say, this is unacceptable behavior. You can't treat me this way. You don't do that without self-awareness. If you don't like who you are, if you're miserable, those things will never occur. So the male toxicity, to me, it's a question of the person want to grow. And we need to cut it off. We need to cut off the air source for this. I try to tell my players, don't engage with that. Let's not engage with that. And I'm all for the fun banter and trash talking, e.g. for, we love all of it. But there's a time and a place and a way to do it respectfully and to uplift other people. So if it's not the truth, you don't need to share it. And if someone's sharing something that it's not the truth, be gone with them. Maybe that's where I say I'm a man, right? I'm willing to let you go without any consequence for me. If you're not bringing me good news, if you're not bringing me the truth, if you're not celebrating my successes, if you don't want something good for me and my health, I don't have space for that. And so I think that we're asking other men in the community to start looking at them. Don't look at yourself in some weak, malleable sense. Like, you are able to have healthy relationships and have boundaries and connect with people. And those aren't feminine traits necessarily. Those are things that we have to do. To answer your question directly, though, Jordan, I think there's a bottom percentage of it we need to cut off. If we see that it's completely toxic and Flowers, we meditate in those moments. We shut down the computer in those moments, and we walk away and we say, that's not my gift. I don't need to open this gift from this person. They want to get a rise out of it. I told a player. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the example I used a long time ago with Renegades, we talked about when somebody brings you a gift at your birthday party. Let's say Flowers was having a big party and someone showed up, a troll, showed up to Flowers' big party. And Flowers looks at me and goes, Edward, that guy's a troll. I don't want him to be here. And that guy comes over and goes, Flowers, here's this gift. You got to open it, man. Open this up. It's not your gift until you take it. You can give that back, say, nah, this isn't for me. You can take this back home with you. You can leave it on the table. You don't have to open that. So let's be very careful on what we're taking in, the information, the gifts from other people. Are we giving other people gifts? And if it's somebody you don't know, we need enough self-efficacy to say, this isn't my gift. I don't need to open this. I'm going to go focus on something else, anything else, but I'm going to go focus my attention elsewhere.
I like that.
All sad.
The gift metaphor. I'm down with that. Gentlemen, I'll be right back. I gotta go get some more water. Gotta stay hydrated so I get better fast.
But before we go to you, Hidon, I agree with everything that was said before. We kind of reiterate. So my takeaway was the net effect of whatever you're watching, whatever you're consuming, whatever media should be positive, not negative. So if you're trying to differentiate between, toxic versus positive behaviors, traits, people, personalities, you should think, what is the net effect of this on me? Do I feel better after this, or do I feel worse? And again, that goes back to the self-reflection, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that I see online, even if I initially might agree with maybe a concept of it, I'm like, well, this is actually not a positive thing. So the best example in League would be you're tilted and you run it down. At the end of that, do you actually feel better? And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that was fun. But like, no, you lost LP, you dragged your whole team with you. Everyone was upset. Everyone was flaming everybody. And the net effect of that decision was negative. And so I see it all the time when I play, is that one player gets tilted, they get mad at someone else, or they get mad at their jungler, whatever, and then they're arguing back and forth. So the one player decides to run it down. Like, hey, you know what? Screw you. You keep typing at me. I'm going to run it down now. You thought I was inting before. Now I'm going to int. I'm going to show you how to int. And so they just completely ruin the game for everybody. They go into that lobby after. They don't actually feel good. I've seen these lobbies where at the end they're like, well, I told you guys. That's what I said I was going to do. And now look, everyone lost. And nobody wins in that scenario. So why do it? But I've always just sat there and kind of stared at the messages after for a minute and just thought about it. I'm like, where did this go wrong? Like what happened in this player's mind that they decided this is the decision I'm going to make now, where, and it's to protect themselves. They're not self-aware enough because they think, oh, I was playing bad. I went 0-3 in lane. I probably don't deserve to win this game. But if I had played my best at that point on, we might have won. My whole team was carrying. But because I was so annoyed and afraid to admit that I'm actually bad, or I played bad this game, I made myself play so bad it was undeniable that this was intentional. And that's to protect themselves. But in the end, all they did was get the same result, but now everyone hates them. So go on to you though, Hidon. Like, what are some of the things that you think would help individuals differentiate between toxic and positive behaviors?
A lot of good stuff was said so far, right? I think it's hard to say more, but something I would say that hasn't been said yet is there's like a very thin line between positive and negative, I would say, because in the middle you have constructive, right? Constructive positivity. Like I like to surround myself with people that push me, because if I don't get pushed, I feel like I can easily stagnate myself. Although I am very motivated and I'm very open-minded to improving and listening to other people, I like people to say, okay, that was good, but what now? I want to be pushed, but I also want to be satisfied with what I've had, like what I have done so far. Because if all you do is push for the next one, you forget about what you actually have. And it's something I've learned in a very young age, just realizing what I actually have and appreciating it, and then slowly moving forward to just realize that all that matters to me is being happy. So if that means turning down a sponsor deal that's whatever, but doesn't fit my morals, then I will essentially feel great maybe with what I got in the beginning, but in the long-term run, it wouldn't make me happy. Because I would much rather just have a job that I appreciate it every single day, I love it, than have a job that gives me a shit ton of money, but I will hate it waking up. Because again, I could die tomorrow and then I spent my days being miserable. So just making sure that I surround myself with people that say, okay, that was really good, but what now? What are you gonna do now? How do you push yourself? Because I don't like people that always say, okay, really good, really good, really good. I want to be pushed. I want people to, I would like to push people around me as well. Because let's say someone got Challenger, a student of mine got Challenger, and I said, okay, that's good. But what now? Are you improving, or is your next goal to just fixate on that, like that pixel number that doesn't mean anything, or is it to improve yourself in life or in the game? It can be anything.
Yeah.
So
I love that the rank. I love that the rank is even called Challenger, right?
Yeah.
It's not a rank of like you're a master is below Challenger, which is really interesting to me. You know, like it says a lot about what that really means. Like,
I can't remember who said it, but earlier someone said the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, that was you know,
know,
yeah, exactly.
and it's the same
Master.
Yeah, academia.
Master of nothing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, same thing in academia. Yeah, I think something that I've pulled out of the theme is all of us seem to have a strong moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we seem pretty strong and familiar with like our moral aptitude. And then I like that at the end of this, Hidon was talking about basically intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation, and I think it's maybe a male toxic trait to be just extrinsically motivated. Right, to only be motivated based on other people see and understand and be able to judge you based on or versus the intrinsic, which is being happy and enjoying your life and feeling good about who you are and, you know, enjoying your relationships.
Yeah, kind of cool. On that note too. Out of curiosity, and you guys don't have to get too, you know, in the weeds or in depth if you don't want to, but how many of you had strong relationships with your fathers? Yeah, I did not. I'll be honest. I had no father figures. My parents divorced when I was, I think I was 6 or 7, and he left. I saw him once a year till I was about 16, 17. I always said when I was younger, I found my father figures in the military. You know, I grew up with a mom and a sister. It was all women household. And so it's really interesting to me that I see some similarities. And the reason I can sort of, in some ways, empathize with a lot of the guys that are retweeting and posting some of this really toxic, in my opinion, masculinity stuff, is that I felt that way for a long time too when I was young. I was like, I wanted to be a strong warrior. You know, there's this mythos of if you go to war and you have muscle and you work out and you eat nothing but red meat, you're a strong man. I did that. I literally did that, and guess what? I found out after, I was like, man, that didn't fix anything for me in my head. I didn't feel more like a man. I felt more confused. I was like, I did war. I did all that. And I know and by society standards, I am more manly now. I gained like 40 pounds of muscle. And then I came back to the States, and it wasn't until, honestly, a couple of years ago, I started going to therapy. I started working with, you know, a life performance coach. I started digging more into myself. I was like, man, I feel more like a man now because I'm self-aware of my own feelings and being comfortable enough with who I am to not have to extrinsically perform in a way that makes me seem more like a man in that sense. And I think a lot of it came down to not having a strong male father figure in my life growing up. And so what you start to do is you start to explore. You start to gravitate towards, well, what do I view as a strong male character? And if I become that, will that make me manly? And more often than not, you end up just being confused, and you end up being, I guess, disappointed in yourself. And at least in my experience, you feel disappointed because you did all the things you're supposed to do and you're the least happy you've ever been. I got a doctorate. I got really in shape. You know, I was a veteran. I checked every box, and I was the least happy I'd ever been. And that to me was really a wake-up call. I'm like, well, if I'm doing all this and I'm truly unhappy, then what does that mean? You know, what does that mean about myself? It's like, well, it means that I didn't really actually learn about myself. I didn't really become a man. I learned what other people thought I should be, and I became that, and it wasn't actually what I want to be. And then once you find out what you want to be and you actually accept it, you become the man enough to say, look, this is who I am, then you can actually find true happiness. You can actually start to accept yourself for who you are. I mean, Riste, you were the one person who didn't raise your hand. What was your experience with that?
Oh gosh, okay. All right, let me try to keep this concise. I don't think really I had like the proper father figure in my life, and I'm gonna be super sparse with details. Like, I grew up with a parenthood being like, okay, yeah, I gotta do the opposite of everything my parents do, because if I follow anything like my parents, I'm gonna be the one thing I don't want to be. And that left like a big hole as to like, okay, who do I look up to? Who do I actually really follow? And like, I didn't have many friends. Yada yada yada. It's tough. Like the more I look back, the more I realize how much, even though I tried to go against like what examples were put in front of me, I still deal with a lot of systemic issues with like how I express myself, like being able to listen, being able to feel, understand, like yourself. I too, well, this year most specifically, I was able to go ahead and find the courage to be able to seek therapy for the first time. And I always think back to like my own like home where my father had like this little sign that said, you'll never see a motorcyclist outside of a therapist office. Like it was just joked about, or like it was some sort of comical thing. Like, oh, like saying, oh, if you need to go to therapy, then already you're lost. Yeah. You're just a lost cause. There's just no point. Like if you're already stooping that low, and that's the thing, that's how I thought in my head, I stooped that low, but it's not stooping. Like I found my courage being able to open up and starting to really hard reflect with the help of a professional to be able to start addressing some of the various issues that were going on in my life. And it really sucks that I didn't have that type of figure in my family. Like admitting that it really hurts every single time. And but at the same time, I'm also grateful because somehow I was able to realize that a healthy form of masculinity and extending to who I want to be as a person, that journey, I think, has shown that I can really be so strong as a person to be able to overcome those things, even if I felt like I was alone at times. And maybe other people watching this can feel that way too. Like it can feel so alone when you don't have somebody to follow in your footsteps. You have to like, it feels like when you have your own path as a person, it feels so like depressing and crippling, and like not having that father figure really did suck. But at the same time, there is hope for people who don't have that figure in their life. You can be that figure to somebody else. Like if I ever want to be a father, I know that the legacy of my family and all the bad stuff that's going on, without getting too much into detail, that can stop with me. If I want to be that friend to another person, all those toxic traits that I adopted as a kid, that can stop with me. I can be the one to end it. I can be the one to decide, you know what, it's time to run things differently this time. So it sucked, but it's also empowering at the same time. Like that perspective, that humbling in a sense, was extremely, like, it was extremely like mind-opening to me. And I'm really happy that I survived the ride, to be honest. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And if you guys don't have any, like, to anybody watching, if you guys don't have any figures and like you feel ashamed of it, don't be. Everyone walks a different path of life. Sometimes people have many gifts. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be a thing. It could be a story. It could be a book. You know, people get influenced by fictional characters all the time. Building your own sense of what's right versus what's wrong doesn't always have to come from a parent. You know, sometimes it could come from a friend. You know, I look at life much differently because of a friend I met in high school, and we weren't related by blood, but because of the kindness of their heart, they showed me something that led to my own path of positivity, and I'm very, very thankful for it. So yeah, it does suck. Talking about it sucks, but at the same time, I'm really happy that things happened the way that they did. And yeah. Okay.
You're so courageous. Thank you for sharing that with me. Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I'm so proud of you. I mean, yeah, it takes tremendous courage. For those listening, what this man's going through takes tremendous courage, and it can end. I've talked to a lot of people who say the best example that my parents gave me was, I don't want to be my parents. And I can't tell you how many times I've said to people, you don't choose your parents. You don't choose them. And in a large way, they didn't choose you either. You know, so we just kind of get thrown in these things with them, and that's a lifelong. My therapist told me I'll have all my parental things figured out before my 180th. Okay, so keep that in mind. He's a jokester. He said, "Yeah, Edward, you're doing great work. You'll have it figured out before 180. Keep working." Yeah. Right. So it's a long journey of figuring out who we are and where we're coming from, where we're going.
I think my favorite thing you said in that was that you can be a leader, right? And that to me is manliness, right? Being a leader, being a role model for others, being the person that you wish you had known. Like I oftentimes think that to myself, like, am I someone who I would look up to if I was a kid again? Could I be my own father figure? When I was younger and I was confused, I didn't have that growing up. I was like, if I met myself now, would I be proud of who I am now? And I think having that as a kind of a moral compass as well is really, really powerful. Thinking about what it is that you value and what are the things that you can do to be a role model to others. That's actually why I wanted to do this. I think there's a ton of people out there who would benefit a lot from seeing kind of positive role models. What are your guys' thoughts? Flowers, Hidon.
So I think Riste hit home one of the points that I consider most near and dear to my own heart in terms of how I think about myself in terms of how others perceive me. And that I think one of the best things that you can do, if you don't know what choice to make, if you don't know what action to take, if you don't know how you should conduct yourself and carry yourself, be for other people what you were never able to find for yourself. If you were never able to find something that brought you peace, if you were never able to find someone whose opinion you could trust, if you were never able to look around you and see somebody that you knew that you would be able to feel like things were going to be all right, if you, like, if this guy's got my back, like it's all going to work out or something, like, be that for the people around you. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to find people that make me feel comfortable or make me feel reassured or make me feel like confident. But I can do my best to be the kind of person that allows people around me to feel that way. I can do my best to try to be the kind of person that I wish there were more people like that in the world. And that's one of the things that I most evaluate myself on, is whenever I have something happen or I make some choice that I'm like, man, that was a stupid choice, or, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or whatever. One of the immediate reasons that I have that reaction that is so negative towards myself is I'm like, that's not the person that I know that I can be. That's not the person that I want to see more of. That's not the person that I wish I could find. And so whenever, like, one of the things I actually took this as a huge compliment when I go to a lot of parties. I like to party. It's always a good time for me. I have a great time doing it. And one of my buddies who's been to a lot of parties that I've been to, he commented one time just randomly on a Twitter thread about, like, hey, just good vibes thread. Tag some people that bring good vibes. And he tagged me and he said, love the fact that this guy always tries to talk to the shy people, the like new people, anybody who seems out of their element at a party, and get him involved, get him talking, get him having fun with everybody else. And I love it. To this day, that is one of the best compliments I ever received. I'll be 85 years old, laying in a bed, like not able to remember my own name. And I will remember that compliment because as somebody who, when I was like a teenager, had terrible social skills and had no idea how to talk to people and always felt awkward in so many different situations, the fact that I'm able to be that difference maker for people and be the person who makes them not feel so isolated and not feel so weird and not feel so out of place, that's exactly what I want to do. And that's one of the things that I always strive for. And one of the things that I think is an absolute marker of positive masculinity is being for others what you could never find for yourself. Because it's again, I'm sorry, Riste, I got to run it back. I know it's a broken, I'm completely losing the metaphor. I'm repeating it too much at this point, but it's the hammer. You got to build something. It's that really old metaphor of the guys planting the seeds for the trees that aren't going to grow in their lifetime. You don't do it expecting it to work out for you. Oh, if I'm nice to these guys, then somebody's going to be nice to me. Fuck that. Be nice to people for the sake of creating a better environment than the one that you were in. Be nice to people. Be enabling of people. Be supportive of people for the sake of not having somebody else have those crappy feelings and have that lousy self-perception that you had. Like, that's one of the things that I think is most important.
I was expecting all these Skarner metaphors. I just come here with poppy metaphors here and there.
Yeah, sorry, bro. I guess we just we got the hammer. Poppy #1 in the meta right now for a reason. Let's go.
Yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, I mean, we're coming up over an hour, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. I understand you got stuff to do. So, in closing, I guess, what are some thoughts that you guys all have? We'll go through each person one at a time. What are some thoughts that you have in regards to, we've kind of talked a lot about what people can do to steer themselves away from things. What are some positive traits? But what are some general advice for people? If you have anything that, especially for younger viewers, like, hey, what are some ways that you can think about becoming a better man?
So I'll go ahead and start since I'm the top left picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think going back to what we talked about beforehand, talking about the 80s action hero, the typical definition of masculinity here in the good old US of A, and what everybody's supposed to be. The reason that those guys are the stereotypical, like the masculine figure, they're tough, they're strong, they get stuff done, they take no crap, right? Like they're their own man. But you don't have to go out and participate in a guerrilla war regime against like a corrupt government or something 10,000 miles away, like doing some Rambo shit to get that done, right? Like so many of these traits are derived from like really basic stuff of standing up for what you believe in, being a good person, looking out for people who can't look out for themselves. And what I would ask people is whenever they look at who they look up to, like tell some young kid who's 12 or 13, who do you look up to? They answer, why do you look up to him? What about him makes him a role model for you? What about him makes him special? What about him makes you aspire to be him? And if the answer is, oh, well, I don't want to be him, I just think he's funny or whatever. Just, okay, so who do you want to be? Like, who is the guy who you want to be? Who is just the best guy? And being able to ask those questions and figure out, like, who the people you want to be are. Because who you want to be is who you wish there was more of. Right? Because if nothing else, at a bare minimum, this is mathematical. If you want to be X person, you're saying, I wish there was more of them because I want to be you. So that's you plus one. You plus me being like you, that's you plus one. You wish there was more of this person. So if you want to be somebody and you are wishing there was more of this person, you wish there were more of those traits in the world. What are those traits? Why do those traits need to be expanding? Why do more people need to be like that? What does it do? And always be looking for ways to build up not just yourself, but everybody around you. Real men, real leaders, real biggest, baddest, and chattest. Do not knock everybody around them down so that they can reign supreme over a kingdom of ruins and ashes. Real men, real leaders, build up everybody around them. They create a space and a place and a community and a society better than the one that existed before they touched it. If your touch makes things worse, then you're doing something wrong. If your touch leaves things better and leaves people feeling better and feeling more empowered and feeling more like they can be themselves and they can really get things done and they can achieve, then hey, you're on the right track.
Awesome. Yep.
Bravo.
Good advice.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm going to keep mine short because that was real flowers. One thing that I would probably tell young men in particular is spend more time alone in silence without distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Spend more time by yourself, not necessarily ruminating in your, but allowing your thoughts to express themselves, allowing yourself to feel your thoughts instead of trying to be reactionary. I think a lot of the younger crowd has a tough time sitting in silence, has a tough time not distracting themselves, has a tough time not taking in stimulus. So I'd like to see more time spent in self-contemplation. You can't come up with a plan if you don't think about what you want. You can't come up with a goal if you don't sit with yourself for a few minutes and feel out what you want out of this life. So I think I would ask them to not be so reactionary. Take some time, as we've kind of spoke ad nauseum on this topic, create some space, take some time, explore how you feel about something without the need to act on it right now. Just explore the way it makes you feel and start questioning these things. Be willing to take the perspective taking. Please meditate. Please start meditating when you're young. Take some time and explore what's going on in between your ears and in your heart. We can all, I love the idea of building. A lot of the people that I speak to might not be in a position to start building. They might not feel like they're in a position to start helping other people. Flowers reminds me of Ram Dass, who I love Ram Dass. If you don't know who Ram Dass is, get into Ram Dass, kids. But this idea of how can I help others, you will give so much more back to yourself. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what to do, go help someone else. You'll find out so much more about yourself as Flowers is kind of. So you don't have to be the perfect example for someone else to help them. Helping people is a lot easier than. But please take some time and allow these things to exist and explore what they feel like and seek help to talk about them.
Awesome. Hidon?
Just to quickly build on that, like there's a very, very big difference between being lonely and spending time with yourself, because that's something I had to learn as well. Very young age as well, actually. Like, you get told that you have to be social and stuff like that. I love spending time with myself. It's something that I do it very often. It's very enjoyable. You have to understand that there's a very thin line between being lonely and spending time with yourself. And it's way better to spend time with yourself, constipating about what you want to be, what you want to do, than to like socialize with bad people. Because those bad people, they might feel good in like the short term, but they will have either a conscious decision or a subconscious decision on you, and you cannot change that. That's just how it is. So it is way better spending time with yourself, thinking about what you want to do, what you want to be, than to spend time with people that ultimately will have some sort of bad impact on you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I mean a good like example of this also in the League community is the group called L9. Like, people in this space, they attach themselves, not all of them, but most of them, with negative ways of acting. And as a young man, you cannot think for yourself. I know that when I was 12 and 13, I just listened, and then I was like, that's just what it is, So just because it feels good in the short term doesn't mean it will help you in the long run. So realize what it means to spend time with yourself and what you want to do. That would be my advice.
That's great. All right, Riste?
Cool. And I think building on that, like, we don't even have to talk about League of Legends, but I'll reference it really quickly, because I lost like my mind, like literally like season 10, just grinding out solo queue, being the lone wolf, the solo queue warrior. What ended up happening during all that time, all the solo queue games I played off stream, just trying to get Challenger back, that old emotional journey, I just closed myself off. And I think when it comes to like influences and having the proper people in your life, it's easy when we view the model of success to be like isolation, just like neglecting things, and I took that path and I neglected a lot of friendship as a result. I have a really, really amazing friend in my life now, and it's always so profound, even if it may not be profound to other people, but it is to me. Anytime I just explain like what's happening in my life, some choice I'm about to make, he always says, well, that's cool and all, Riste, but yeah, like, I want to ask, like, how do you feel about that? And like, it's astounding to me, because like I don't think I've really had many friends in my life who just stop and ask that question to me. And I'm at this point now where I want to tell other people, like, hey, if you have somebody in your life that has that, capacity to stop you and just to help you reflect, not take on every problem by yourself, but to help you through that, you got to hold on to them for dear life. Like, life is filled with so many like challenges, and like it's so easy, I think, and this stems into toxic masculinity, just to be that lone wolf. If I'm independent and I'm able to take on things by myself, this is the true sign of independence. And it's just like you close door after door after door, and I think like that's what allows that loneliness to foster, because whether it be seeking through help or just enjoying someone else's company and just saying, oh, I did this all by myself. There's other ways to achieve success rather than just having to build an empire by yourself, So just keep doors open, close doors where appropriate in terms of toxic individuals, but keep them open for the people who care about you. Because as much as you want them to be there for you, you got to be there for them too. And that's, I think, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in trying to be better as a friend. So never forget that.
Yeah, that's great. I guess
just quickly respond if I can.
Yeah.
So, like, I have these pillars as well when it comes to being happy. Like, you have to eat right, I mean, eating right can mean anything, you know. It doesn't have to mean never eating fast food or whatever. But for the main part, eating right, doing activity, it can be gym, it can be baseball, whatever you enjoy, and then sleeping. And I value all of these three the same. And if one of them falls, the rest will fall with it. So I have these strong pillars, and then on the fourth one I have my morals, the way that I act, the way that I view things, the way that my mind works. But that one I separate from the other three. And obviously when you are young, you can get away with everything because you don't have like this deep thinking mindset, and you could eat whatever and you could sleep whatever, but it doesn't really matter. You could still function. But the older you get, the more important it is. So by building these pillars early on, you're already creating good habits that will help you in like your whole life, not just League or CSGO or whatever you play. It's just super important to build them early on and understand what they actually mean for you, because it will ultimately create a very happy mindset. And that's what helps me stay sane and stay happy for like at least the majority of the year, I would say. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, awesome. Balance is very, very hard for League players and gamers of any game really to understand. That's definitely something that me and Edward work a lot on with our players and pro teams, finding balance and things. If I had one piece of advice for anyone, it'd be that you should constantly challenge yourself and your ideas, right? Even if you find us to be positive role models, you find other people to be positive role models, challenge them. Challenge your views of them. If someone is worthy of being looked up to, they will meet that challenge every time. And if you don't challenge the people that you look up to, you're going to inevitably find people to look up to that probably aren't going to meet that standard, and you're not going to realize it. So this is something I try to do myself, is, you know, constantly challenging my own thoughts, beliefs. I read contradictory like views of the same events, of the same topics. I try to push myself to actually take in information from all sides of an issue and then come to my own conclusions. And I know everyone says they do that, but in reality, very few people truly do that. You know, very few people look at something objectively and actually give it the time of day to think about it. You might say, oh, I read both sides of the news article, but you're reading one with the intent to think that it's wrong, and you're reading the other with the intent to confirm your own beliefs. And I think that's very, very destructive in today's world, because everyone is super biased now. Everything you see online, heavily biased. And so what you have to do is start thinking of things objectively. Is this objectively good, or is this objectively negative towards people or groups of people or myself? You know, is me taking on this belief going to be destructive to myself? And so I always try to, you know, urge people, think about, you know, what it is that you're actually intaking, and to make sure that you're assessing and being critical of it. Well, I kind of ended on that note. We got really, really deep into some great topics. I really appreciate the time that all of you have spent with me and with the chat. I hope that everyone in the chat got something valuable out of this, and hopefully it sparks some new ideas, some new conversations. I'm really hoping to do this at least once every couple weeks, every 3 weeks. So we'll definitely do it again. If there are people that, you know, people out there you guys recommend or you look up to and you'd like to suggest that I try to bring on, have you know, just send me a DM or whatever. I'll try to reach out. I can't promise they'll respond. I'm not that big a celebrity. If Captain Flowers is a D list, I'm somewhere in the LM range.
Oh, not the L.
And also,
Hey,
but yeah, thank you all so much for coming on. It was great chatting with you. Love all you guys. We'll definitely have to talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. See you all. Bye, chat.
It's been great,
Bye, everybody.
guys.
All right.
Cheers.
And yeah, for everyone in the chat, I will be putting the VOD up. I'm going to have someone edit the video. We'll definitely put it on YouTube, so this will be available to watch again later. All right. Thank you, guys.